All right, it's 1 o'clock. I want to thank the attendees who have already signed on with us. Welcome to the podcast by GlobalPro Recovery. We're here to talk about what's going on in the restaurant hospitality industry as it relates to insurance. I want to run through some of the issues that you may have been confronted with and a negative storyline that we hope to change. Go through a basic agenda just so you understand kind of where we're going to go. First off, we're going to start off with a little bit of a history. Talk a little bit about background of GlobalPro, what we are, what we can do for you, history of virus and bacteria exclusions, and how we've overcome those in the past with regards to some of our clientele. Some basic principles regarding business income. Some of you might have some questions regarding how to put together your loss and recovery as it relates to any sort of claim, and the same would apply here. And then we'll wrap it up with some other issues that you might be hearing about regarding physical damage and its necessity, et cetera, as well as a robust Q&A here at the end. If you have questions as we're going through the process, make sure that you're submitting those in the Q&A section on your screen there. That'll give us an opportunity to go through those questions in an orderly fashion, so I make sure that I hit each of your issues. Try not to be too specific. If you do have specific questions, I encourage all of you to contact us at 855-487-7475 to talk to any one of our insurance experts. I can help you walk you through the process. But as I mentioned, a little basic history on GlobalPro. We represent thousands of community associations and business owners throughout the country and abroad. We've recovered more than $1 billion in insurance damages. And we've represented many restaurants and other businesses in the hospitality industry that may serve it. Anything from the restaurant storefronts to the suppliers, as well as the landlords that may own and operate the shopping centers or the hotels in which these restaurants may be located at. So we have a general understanding of how any one of the disruptions of those processes can affect you and your business, and what this pandemic could be doing to your business and all of your employees. It's a really trying time, and we want to be here with you. We want to be your resource. So again, make sure you hit the Q&A, submit your questions so we can get back to you. A little background on myself: studied engineering, went on to get a general contracting license, hopped into insurance. While being in insurance, started developing insurance technology. Our team here at GlobalPro has grown to include attorneys, forensic accountant, engineers that assist our clients with handling of insurance claims, as well as placing insurance. We have a signature process where we onboard our clients to help them not only make sure they get what they're entitled to from their insurance policy, but we make sure they get what they need in order to insure for loss or risk. So the basic history of a virus and bacteria is that in 2006, the insurance industry decided to curb potential claims for virus or bacteria by offering an exclusion or adding an endorsement to a lot of policies. Now being faced with the second issue regarding a virus in modern history here in South Florida, whether it's Zika, which we recently had, or now the COVID-19, or formerly most people refer to as coronavirus. We're seeing a lot more, obviously, attention in this area, and we want to make sure that you have the answers to your questions. So this exclusion was intended to curb these claims, and the insurance company made it their initiative at the onset of this pandemic to come out loud and fast to tell all of us that there are no coverage for these types of losses. Oddly enough, and the narrative has started changing. You're starting to be bombarded, I'm sure, with articles and information regarding the possibility of coverage. The restaurant industry, just as early as today, stood up and called upon the insurance industry to do the right thing, to step up, to provide coverage, to help these businesses in the time of need. And that's what we're hoping we can help you all with, because when it came to Zika, our clients did get paid. And we believe that in some of these situations, that the same could be true here. So there's a big focus from a lot of brokers and a lot of the insurance industry on issues. We want to talk about solutions, and that's what this is all about. We want to talk about different nuances of these policies which would actually provide coverage. And while there may have been an intention, maybe that intent is not actually written in a way that the insurance company believed it was, and therefore leaves you the opportunity for coverage. And I'm going to tell you that we have reviewed somewhere over 100 policies for restaurants and other companies in the hospitality industry, and the gross majority of those we do believe has some sort of coverage, if not all coverage, for their damages. So the lesson we learned from Zika was to look really past the issue of the actual virus itself and to look at what was actually going on, how was the area being treated, and what were they treating it with, and how were they causing physical damage. Interestingly enough, though, the recent orders that have been issued by some of the local authorities have language in them that says, and this is from the Broward County one, whereas this emergency order is necessary because of the propensity of the virus to spread person to person, and also because the virus is physically causing property damage due to its proclivity to attach to surfaces for prolonged periods of time. Viruses physically causing property damage. If you look at some of the earlier news articles and information that was coming out of the insurance industry, they were talking about a lack of physical damage. Interestingly enough, we have now orders from the Panhandle, New York, New Jersey, as well as here in South Florida that all substantiate that viruses do cause physical damage. In the case of Zika, it really wasn't even the virus, it was how they were treating for the virus. The actual chemical that they were spraying was causing physical damage to the property. It was corrosive properties of it allowed us an opportunity to obtain coverage for damages to our client's property, as well as the income losses that they suffered. So again, you need to look past the issues and think differently about these things, because our local governments are doing what they can to look past the issues that are presented by the insurance companies regarding the limitations or exclusions for this and the lack of physical damage. I think we've gotten over that hump in the initial reportings of that. And then there's some questions about, oh, it's probably not, or it shouldn't, or it couldn't have, or maybe it didn't. Again, behind the curtain, look at why did you buy insurance, right? At the end of the day, you bought this to protect you from loss or damage. We want to make sure that you're obtaining the coverage you think or believe that you paid for. And in your time of worst need, we want to make sure that you're actually getting paid. So the narrative is changing. Articles are being published. In fact, we just published an article in the South Florida Business Journal. I encourage you to check out our website. You can pull down the article. It starts out with a broker basically telling you exactly what I've been saying, which is that it wasn't intended to pay. We don't believe it was paid. It should be paid, or some issue regarding limitations of that coverage. And it ends with quotes from me talking about different nuances and the reasons why there may actually be coverage. So which brings me to the next basic principles of presenting an income loss for an insurance claim. And the reality of it is that you do want to make your claim, because the reality it is that things are changing. The New Jersey government you see is stepping up and is looking to pass bills to force insurance companies to pay. Whether or not they're successful at the end of the day and maybe come down to a constitutional issue, who knows? But the reality of it is that no claim that wasn't filed didn't ever get paid. So we want to make sure that you file your claims. We want to make sure that you put your insurers on notice, but filing that claim, you don't want to be an expert. You don't want to be a virus expert. You want to simply say that you have suffered losses and damages to your claim, to your property and your building, as well as your income, and that you're formally putting the insurance company on notice of those issues. If your broker asks you to put anything in writing, ask them to point in the policy where it requires that. You don't know enough to do that just yet. You want to be careful with what you do actually put in writing to your brokers, or what you put in emails or whatever else, and how that may be construed against you in the future. You want to make sure that you're only acting in the capacity for which you are as a business owner and not trying to be that expert. So make sure when you're giving that notice, you're simply contacting your broker or the insurance company directly, letting them know that your business has suffered loss and that you are formally making a claim. They may ask you for a date of loss or specifics regarding it. Again, to the extent that you know, a good rule of thumb is, when did you first have to close your business, or when was your first notice of the issue in your area, or when did you first start to suffer some type of income loss? It's an on or about. It's approximate. So don't get caught up in those details. So again, talking about solutions and rather than the issues, some basic principles. One of the things that we're telling a lot of our insureds or business owners that have been contacting us is the first demand that you're making on your insurance company is really for that advance payment. Your rolling incurred expenses is what you want to try to ascertain and determine right out of the gates. Get with your controller or your CFO, or if you do your own books and records, look at what your costs are on a rolling basis as if there was no issue going on that was causing you to suffer loss. Try to figure out what that amount is. Don't put aside the income side of it, the profit and the gross revenue, and simply look at your expenses and try to figure out on a rolling basis what those costs are and make that demand on your insurance company. Then the next part of your valuation is going to be your net and your gross income. based on your policy conditions, it's going to dictate whether or not you're entitled to either gross revenue or your net income. And it's important that you obviously analyze your policies with an advisor such as GlobalPro and our experts here, or someone that may be savvy in this particular type of coverage. And by doing so, that analysis should look at where you were going as well as a look back. We generally look about 3 years. But again, some of your businesses may be very seasonal, so you got to look within that season. Don't just look on a year-over-year basis or a month-over-month basis. Sometimes we have strong seasons, whether it was during the spring break time or thereafter. So regarding the issues that we've been presented with regards to direct physical damage, we've addressed that, right? You have these executive orders that confirming that this virus is actually causing physical damage. We've gotten over that hump. Then we have questions regarding civil authority and whether or not you'd be entitled to certain recoveries. And again, the narrative is changing regarding essential business and what is an essential business, or those that are not, and whether or not a restaurant or a hospitality industry may be. And we need to continue to track those trends and analyze how that may impact the explanations regarding civil authority and how that civil authority was handed down to you as a business owner to actually close your businesses. And what was going on around your business before COVID-19 became an issue? Were there spring breakers on-site, off-site, causing physical damage to your properties or others? We did see many videos of police using kind of riot tactics in regards to paintball guns and other things to subdue certain crowds that were congregating in and around your businesses, and how that may have led to your closures, and why that in itself may not actually be virus related. And it's something very interesting and where you kind of look past present and the current issues and try to understand a little bit more about how we got to where we are today. Spending time looking beyond it will get you a place where we got with Zika and understanding how these chemicals were actually causing physical damage to the property as opposed to the virus itself as causing the loss of income. And we go through a process here. We call it the signature process, which is ready, recover, rebuild, where we want to analyze your insurance. We want to look at how you're recovering and then where you're going to go and how you're going to rebuild from this. And it's important to look at those things because there may be costs associated with you ramping back up. And it's important that you also ascertain and identify what expenses there may be associated with that and include that in your financial evaluations and how you're going to get ready for the upcoming storm season. You're not hearing a lot of conversation about it. I'm hearing it every so often in some other podcasts and some other blogs that I've been reading intently. I kind of feel like I can't pull myself away from it because we're really trying. We're here for the local business communities. We feel for you. We're doing everything we can. The Global Cares Foundation has been buying supplies and donating and offering to local businesses to include in their own promotions. So we got to be thinking about how we're going to get ready for that next event. Because when you do prevail from this, and maybe you're not what you were before the actual issue, but maybe you're a bit differently, or you evolve from this and your business changes. However that may be, you may be presented with new risk, and you need to start thinking about how a hurricane in this current environment may also damage you or your businesses, as well as the trickle-down economics, your employees. And what are you going to do differently as you're going through a renewal process or looking at your financials or documentation or how your business and supplies come in or how that's handled? May do that differently going into this storm season now that you've been hit with probably one of the what's going to be one of the greatest economic downturns in U.S., if not the world's history. So it's important as we get ready to recover and rebuild from this loss, and we plan for what's to come, that we look at these issues, we look beyond the initial narrative of that loud and fast of you're not covered, and we start to see this evolution of a different type of discussion, which is maybe you're covered, maybe there's that opportunity. And it's going from a maybe to probably rather than a probably not, which is really, really interesting. And you can go to trade magazines like Law 360 or the Southwest Business Journal or Modern Restaurant Magazine is going to be writing an article of ours. It's going to be talking about the probably rather than the probably not, which is also very, very important. But we got to talk about, as we head into the storm season, the types of stresses that are going to be on your facility and and or at home when you're at your home where you're using your toilets and your plumbing systems and your electrical equipment more so than you are, and you're now suffering compounding issues on the home front, and how you're going to address those, and making those claims and not ignoring that opportunity to make yourself whole. So continue to think about those things. Continue to think a little bit outside the box. Go look beyond the noise and make sure that you're doing everything you can to protect your business's interests and taking care of your employees, because this trickle-down economics is a real issue here. We want to be your resource. We want to continue doing these podcasts. We want to provide you direct and honest information so that you can obtain the recovery that you're entitled to. That was it. We wanted to, we actually did field several questions that came in before we jumped into the podcast here. So I want to go ahead and give you some of the questions that we had received so far. And again, I want to encourage you, hit the chat function if you can, and submit your Q&A. We have about 9 questions so far. Start with the first one here. What does my policy say about business interruption? There's a lot of words being thrown around. The word interruption, you have the word income, you have contingency business income, you have suspension, you have operation, period of restoration. These are all very complex words. The one thing that you need to take away from here today is that words get their meaning from words around them. So looking at the context for how they were using those words and their intention, add their definitions. And there's different ways in which we can research the definition of a word and how it was actually intended to be used, and or how it may be construed differently in your policy. Policies are going to say in there is that they typically have some requirement regarding the physical damage in order to trigger the business income, typically, okay? And it's not a one-size-fits-all, and that's unfortunately what we're hearing and seeing a lot right now. And the reality of it is that we have these orders which establish direct physical damage. So what does that mean to you in the context of your business interruption? Is that an automatic? And again, the answer is no, but probably. I'd like to say the glass is half full. It isn't until it isn't. All right. So we need to make sure that we analyze the policy and understand how in the context of your policy, now that we've been able to establish that virus can cause physical damage to property, and you have people ingressing your property on a rapid basis, especially at a hotel or a restaurant, how you may be able to establish physical damage to that property and whether or not that physical damage is actually required in order for you to get coverage under your policy. All right. So second question, what can I claim, including costs as business interruption? There's various different coverages under your business interruption or business income loss coverage. We got everything from your extra expense. I talked about that getting ready, and also the rebuilding. And as part of your rebuilding, your ramp up, what are you going to want to do to announce that you're open? When we get on the other side of this thing, you're going to want to tell the public we're open, we're serving, we're doing these things. Or maybe you've incurred expense right now to take your business online or to provide actually delivery of your food rather than actually having patrons in your actual space. If that's the case, then any of your incurred expenses as it relates to having to deliver food or that online presence, which may have cost you money to run ads, et cetera, may be recoverable under extra expense or some of these other costs or coverages in your actual income policy. So just keep track of those expenses. It's really important. And a lot of times if you're running ads, whether it's on your social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, everything else, it's pretty easy to run a report. So make sure you're capturing those expenses as well. Also, if you're paying drivers to deliver this food, make sure you're capturing that expense. If you had to buy more containers, bags, or you had to buy other furniture or appliances that you may have to use in order to keep the food warm because you don't have enough drivers or because of the way you have to prep the food, things like that may be recoverable. So keep track of those expenses. Don't ignore them. Make sure that's included as part of your actual claim for your loss. By the way, if you haven't noticed, there is the Q&A button at the top here, so you can kind of click on it, and we have a couple more coming in here. Got a claim here from Jason. How does the claim process differ from traditional insurance and parametric solutions? Really technical question there, Jason. You know, for those businesses, restaurant owners, we haven't actually seen very many restaurants or hospitality businesses actually purchase the parametric insurance. it's a rather interesting concept and good question, because I don't think it's an insurance that gets enough attention. It's starting to become relevant. I think it's more relevant now than ever, especially with this. And had you been able to afford it and purchase that additional layer of coverage, you very well will find yourself in a much easier position now with regards to coverage. So I would encourage you to analyze your particular type of parametric insurance, because each parametric type of product may measure the type of recovery that you're entitled to differently. It may be due to for instance, in a hurricane situation, the wind speeds, and those wind speeds will, depending on the type of insurer that's providing it, will be based on some third party reporting to them the actual speeds, and then that will establish whatever you may be entitled to from there going forward. So again, interesting concept, something that you definitely want to take a little bit closer look at. I would encourage you to send it along. And we've talked to insurance representatives that were selling that product about their products. And again, I've gotten varying different opinions regarding how it's going to step up and pay for those losses. Another question coming in here is, what if I only have general liability insurance? Would I be able to put a claim for loss of business income? The direct answer is no. General liability insurance generally is for claims made against you, not for you to make claims against yourself. What is your position? Enforceability of virus and bacteria exemption and endorsements. That's a very open-ended question. Enforceability of virus exemption endorsements. There's, again, I think it's for the first time ever that you're seeing them actually be tested. From our evaluation of it, we actually have different types of virus bacteria exemption, or it's not exemption, that's a wrong word to use. Virus or bacteria endorsement. We've received from a number of restaurants specifically that have pathogen exclusions, which don't specifically discuss microorganisms, which is actually an interesting point. We have in your virus or bacteria endorsements, we see a lack of anti-concurrent causation language. Again, if you are making a COVID-19 claim for COVID-19, then you need to have an analysis of how that endorsement will impact any other coverages in that policy, because there is some broad language and implication of its language throughout that could be felt throughout the policy. However, looking beyond the issues, similar to the Zika, I think you may find yourselves in a different situation for a lot of our businesses that were in the coastal areas, especially in Miami Beach during your spring break days. So again, it's really important that you look at these policy forms in conjunction with the rest of the language in the policy, and also analyze the actual situation which had led to the actual loss of income or your extra expense. We had another question coming in here. If I didn't have insurance when the state of emergency was declared, can I buy insurance now and get coverage for the days going forward? Unfortunately, not for losses that you have already experienced, but again, this is a fluid situation. The government has continued to enact certain things at different times, and especially here, I'm here in Miami, you have a difference of opinion regarding stay-at-home orders, and the orders between Broward and Miami are different. You have cities doing different things differently than the county. In New Jersey, they're talking about a law change. So I would encourage you, go ahead and obviously obtain whatever coverage you need, because you may not have insurance now to cover you for these losses. There's been a better time than now in the present to actually go ahead and protect yourself from future losses. Will I need damage to physical property in order to have coverage under civil authority? I think we've answered this question in a couple different ways. First off, there would be a prerequisite in most cases for physical damage. I think the issue of physical damage, though, is I think I've beat that one up a bit. I don't think it's an issue of actual physical damage to property anymore, given the actual orders that have been issued and the evidence that's available, scientific evidence that's out there. where you have the proliferity of this issue, this virus out there, and how it attaches the surface and constitutes itself as physical damage. So I don't think that you have that. I think you have other types of physical damages that may be relevant to certain business owners in certain areas that may help you in recovering for loss or damage. So I think it's important that you, again, analyze these forms and look to see how they work in concert with each other. So I think that's a good question here. We have a question regarding supply chains. Interesting. We have several businesses. Second here. Supply chains affected. Is there coverage for that? Well, absolutely. You have your contingent business income coverage. You have other various inland marine coverages that may be afforded to you. Again, another area of rather complex insurance coverage issues. How's your business operate? What are the trickle-down economics regarding it, whether it's from the supplier to the wholesaler to the retailer, and who actually, based on your contract, had its insurable interest in that product, and can that product actually be delivered to the property it's intended, or is it spoiling or getting damaged while sitting at your property, or did it get damaged in transit because it got held up and it could not be delivered, depending on the way in which it was being shipped. So that's really an important issue there. There's a question coming in regarding, well, I have to prove that COVID or someone with COVID was on my property to get coverage. Again, as it relates to the COVID-19 issues and viruses causing physical damage, I think if you had patrons in your property, let's say since early March or since the first known incident of COVID-19 was in your area, and at the rate that this does spread, and you continue to serve patrons in your at your property throughout that time, the likelihood is that you have no choice but to actually clean your property. And because the likelihood is that you actually do have virus in your facility, your property. In order to ensure that you don't, the only thing you can do is actually clean it. Again, you're going to have to use various different types of chemicals and agents in order to actually mitigate and make your area or your property safe. A lot of restaurants that I've seen are continuing to serve takeout at their property, and wherever that takeout is, or your employees are accessing those areas, making sure that that area is virus-free or was not contaminated is of the utmost importance, and very well may trigger coverage for your business and its income. My supply chain has been affected, as we discussed those things. There's another question coming here. Mandatory shutdowns. Interesting thing, and we're in there. I think there's a good question out there regarding essential businesses and how each of these different types of businesses are going to be addressed regarding how it was shut down and how the language of those efforts by government are going to be interpreted. And is it going to become relevant to any of those sort of coverage questions? And then we have another question here. Been great conversation, guys. Keep the questions coming. That's 6 just hit me right away here. Do I call my carrier and report the claim before I speak with GlobalPro? I'm of the opinion, a strong one, that unless you've had an expert, an insurance expert such as ourselves, someone on our team or myself, reviewing your insurance policy or your coverages and understanding how your business operates, it's going to be very difficult for you to accurately and properly report your claim. Certainly going to be very difficult for you to ascertain what your damages are. And working with our team, you're going to make sure that not only your claim is reported properly, but that you can properly recover from it. So we encourage you to contact us. We work on a contingency fee basis. It's only a percentage of recovery. And for those businesses that are suffering a tremendous amount of loss at this, it's a value add. We're going to help you with your income analysis and putting together the claim and make sure that the appropriate documents are submitted in order for you to get an equitable recovery. Well, with that, guys, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank all that have tuned in here to listen to us. We'll continue to host these podcasts to provide you the information that you need. I would encourage you to contact us with any sort of questions that you may have, to follow up to this podcast. And I wish you the best. I hope you all stay safe, and thanks again.